Hey, and welcome back to Miss Kitty's Wild West Adventures. In our adventures together, I've told you the story of Tom Bell, the very first stagecoach robber, Ben Cool, the very last stagecoach robber, and even Bill Brazelton, the stagecoach robber who claimed he could eat a wagon wheel. But today, by special request, I bring you the story of Charles Bowles, aka Black Bart, the poet and gentleman bandit. Charles Bowles was born in England in 1829 and immigrated to the United States when he was 2 years old. He grew up on the family farm in New York State. In 1849, with gold fever coursing through his veins, he and his cousin David traveled to California to strike it rich. Like many before him, he failed at his first attempt and returned home in 1852. His visit was short-lived, however, lasting just long enough to collect his brother Robert, and then the three men made their way back to California. David and Robert fell ill en route, however, and died before reaching the promised lands of California. Charles made it to the goldfields, but struck out for the second time. In 1854, he returned yet again to the East and married Mary Elizabeth Johnson in Illinois, and together they had 4 children. Charles set up a nice farm for the family. In 1862, with the Civil War raging, Charles joined the Union Army. He fought in both the Battle of Vicksburg and the Battle of Atlanta before being discharged in 1865 and returning to his farm in Illinois. He couldn't stay still for long, however, and soon he found himself in Montana, hoping to strike it rich in the goldfields there. He located a small mine and was bringing in a small but steady income when Wells Fargo offered to buy the land from him. He refused adamantly. Eventually, Wells Fargo got the better of him when they cut off the water supply to the land, forcing Charles to abandon the mine. It was then that Charles wrote letters to his wife expressing his anger with Wells Fargo and his desire to seek retribution against the corporation who, in his mind, had been the only thing standing in his path on his way to riches. 4 years later, on July 26, 1875, a stagecoach on the Copperopolis and Milton Road in Calaveras County, California, was stopped by a highwayman with a slight build, dressed quite dapperly in a long duster coat with a flour sack over his head with holes for eye slits, and wearing a derby hat. The man politely asked the driver, John Shine, to throw down the strongbox and subscribe to Miss Kitty's Wild West Adventures. When Shine hesitated, the robber called out,
"If he dares to shoot, give him the solid volley, boys."
The driver looked around and saw what appeared to be rifle barrels pointed at him from the bushes. He quickly threw down the strongbox, and a female passenger offered the robber her purse, but he declined, stating that he only wanted the Wells Fargo shipment. The robber took an axe, cracked open the box, and took the $160 that he found inside. Once he left, Shine went to retrieve the box. It was then that he discovered that the rifles he thought he had seen were merely sticks positioned in such a way as to look deadly. The robber used the same MO several times over the next 2 years, but on August 3, 1877, he left something behind, a note which read,
"I've labored long and hard for bread, for honor and for riches, but on my corns too long you've tread, you fine-haired sons of bitches."
He signed the poem Black Bart, the Poet. A year later, he robbed yet another stagecoach and left yet another note in his wake.
"Here I lay me down to sleep, to await the coming morrow, perhaps success, perhaps defeat, and everlasting sorrow. Yet come what will, I'll try it on, my condition can't be worse, and if there's money in that box, 'tis money in my purse." His
crimes continued until November 3, 1883. On that date, along the same stretch of road as his very first crime, he hid in the bushes and awaited for the stagecoach to come through. But this time, the strongbox was bolted down into the coach. So he asked the driver, a man by the name of Reason McConnell, to unhitch the team and escort the horses away while he went to work on the strongbox. What he didn't know, however, was that the sole passenger, a man by the name of Jimmy Rolleri, had hopped off the coach earlier to hunt. When he heard what was going on at the coach, Rolleri returned in haste. An experienced shooter, Rolleri shot at the assailant and hit him in the hand. As he fled the scene, the robber dropped a handkerchief, which had a distinctive laundry mark. And it was that mark that detectives used to track him down to a laundry house in San Francisco. It was then that they learned the true identity of Black Bart, the poet, Charles Bowles. When asked why he chose the moniker Black Bart, he said that he had recently read The Case of Summerfield and was enamored with the character by the same name. Wells Fargo only charged him with this final robbery, and he was sentenced to 6 years in San Quentin, of which he served 4 years and was released in January 1888 on good behavior. He first lived in the Nevada House in San Francisco, where Wells Fargo agents kept an eye on him. He then tired of being watched and moved stealthily to the Visalia House in Visalia. By the time Wells Fargo agents tracked him there, he was gone. He was last seen on February 28, 1888. So what happened to Black Bart? No one knows for sure, but one group in Marysville, California, claimed that Charles Bowles changed his name to Charles Wells, died in 1914, and is buried in the Marysville Cemetery. They've done extensive research, but they claim that the only way to definitively know is to disinter the grave and take a DNA sample, something not likely to happen. One other rumor does give this story some credence, however. It was widely believed that Bowles returned to his dastardly ways following his release from prison. It is also believed that Wells Fargo, in an effort to prevent further loss, ended up paying him a monthly pension of $200 to leave their coaches alone. While Wells Fargo denied this claim, it does make sense why Charles Bowles would change his name to Charles Wells, as he was, in theory, bought by Wells Fargo. All in all, his criminal career spanned 8 years. During that time, he was always polite, he never used foul language, he never stole from passengers, and he never, ever fired his weapon. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Miss Kitty's Wild West Adventures. If you did, be sure to give this video a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and ding the bell for notifications. And go ahead and share with your friends. In the meantime, I'll catch you on down the Stagecoach Trail.